Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden, and today we're going to be building a treasure box. Before we get started with building, let's go ahead and introduce the supplies that we're going to need for this project. So for this project, we're going to need a damp rag for glue cleanup, a bottle of glue, a hardware tray, some sandpaper, a hammer block, and our safety glasses. Let's go ahead and put those on now. Now that we've introduced all of our supplies, let's go ahead and talk about the tools that we're going to need. So for this project, I'm going to need a hammer and a Phillips head screwdriver. All right, we've introduced all of our supplies and all of our tools, so the next step will be to talk about our parts. Let's go ahead and talk about our wood parts. The first parts I'm going to be introducing are these two pieces here, and these are going to be marked with the letter A. These will be the short walls for our treasure box. Next, we have two more parts, and these are going to be marked with the letter B. These will be the long walls for our treasure box. Next, we have part C, and this will be the bottom of our treasure box. The next part is part D, and this will be the top of the treasure box. You'll notice that the top has a dado on one side, and the other side is just flat with a center hole. Our last wood part is part E, and this is going to be the insert for our treasure box. You'll notice that the insert has the Elemental Hardware logo, a rounded edge on that side, and a flat edge on the other side with an inset right there in the middle. All right, we've introduced all of our wood parts, so the next step will be to talk about our hardware. Let's go ahead and talk about our hardware. So I've got my hardware bag right here. I'm going to go ahead and take each piece out and introduce it one by one. First thing I have is my knob that looks like this. Next, I have a machine screw. And I have two bags of nails. The first is going to be this blue dot bag, which has my 1-inch finish nails. And then I've got a green dot bag, which is going to have my 3/4 inch finish nails. Now that I've got all the hardware out of this bag, I can get it out of my way and we can move on to the next step. The next step will be to sand all of our wood parts. Let's go ahead and get started sanding. So for that, I'm going to need my sandpaper and my hammer block, and I'm going to set them up together to create a sanding block. I'm going to set the paper down with the soft side facing up, and I'm going to lay the block across it so that it fills up the whole space. I'm then going to fold the edges over the block, and that will form my sanding block. Now let's go ahead and get our pieces prepped to sand. All we need to do to get them ready is to remove this sticker. So I'm going to carefully remove it, and I'm just going to go ahead and place it off to the side. Now when I'm sanding, I want to mostly focus on these end grain edges because these are the cut edges and they're going to be the roughest. So I'm going to spend the most time sanding these edges, and then I'll go once or twice over this veneered edge as well to remove any residue from the sticker. So let's go ahead and get started sanding now. When I'm sanding these veneered edges, I want to do my best to sand with the grain to avoid scratching the piece. Now that I've sanded all of the edges, the last thing I want to do is go over these corners or edges around the outside and do what's called breaking the edge or softening the edge. That's going to make the piece nicer to hold in my hands and also make it less likely to splinter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sanding block and I'm going to place it at an angle over one of those edges and then run it once or twice back and forth over that edge. You really don't want to do too much because you're just rounding that edge over slightly. So let's go ahead and do that all the way around the piece. All right, we've got our first piece done, so we're going to go ahead and repeat those same steps with all of our remaining parts. Alright, I've got all my wood parts sanded, so the next step will be to take my rag and wipe away any dust. Once you've wiped all your pieces, don't forget to wipe up your workstation as well. Now that we've got all of our parts sanded and cleaned up, we're ready to start with our build. The first step will be to begin to attach the short walls to our long walls. Let's go ahead and get started with our build. So for this first step, I'm going to need my 2 short walls and one of my long walls. I'm also going to need to open up my blue dot bag, which contains my 1-inch finish nails. So I'm going to open that up and dump it into the tray. What I'm going to start by doing is placing one of the 1-inch finish nails into each of the pre-drilled holes on this long wall. Now that I've got my nails set, the next thing to do will be to apply some glue to the long side edge of one of my short walls. Now these short walls are kind of hard to identify the short edge from the long edge, so what I like to do is find the edge that's going to match up perfectly with the long wall. You can do that by just running the piece up against the other piece and making sure that they're going to fit perfectly together. You can see if I were to do it on this side, I'm going to have a gap right here. So I want to make sure I find that long edge, the one that fits perfectly along this nailed edge of the long wall, and I'm going to make sure that one of those edges is facing up. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the cap from my glue, and I'm going to place a bead of glue on this up-facing edge. Looks like my glue's a little bit clogged, so I'm just going to use one of my nails and try to open it up. Now that I've got the glue on there, I can go ahead and spread it evenly with a finger. Once I've got my glue spread, I can go ahead and wipe my finger clean. And I can also wipe up any excess glue that might be spilling over the sides of my piece. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up my other short wall. Now I want to make sure that they're both sitting on the same edge. So I'm going to rotate it so that they're sitting symmetrically just like that. And there's really 2 things I can do here. I can either set them like this so that they're parallel, or I can set them perpendicularly like that to form an uppercase T. And I'm going to use this second piece to balance while I put the long wall over the top of that glued edge. So that's going to help me balance. And now I can go ahead and line up this nailed edge of the long wall with the glued edge of the short wall. You really want to take your time when you're lining up these edges because the box has to be perfectly flush in order for the lid to fit properly. Now that I've got my 2 pieces aligned, the very first thing I'm going to do is tack in one of my nails. That means I'm going to hit it about halfway in. Once I've tacked in that nail, I can go ahead and double check my alignment. Everything's still looking good, so I'm going to hammer in the second nail all the way down, and then I'm going to finish off that first one. Alright, I've got both nails fully set, so now I'm just going to go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. I want to make sure to check on the inside of the pieces as well, because that's where there might be some glue hiding. Okay, I've got this first piece this first piece fully secured. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach the remaining short wall. So once again, I'm going to locate that long side edge, make sure it matches up, and I'm going to go ahead and spread some glue onto this edge. Once I've got the glue on there, I can spread it out with my finger. Once again, I can wipe my finger clean and also wipe up any excess glue that might be spilling over. Now this time, since I already have one side attached, I should be able to balance this with no problem. Once I have it balanced, I really want to take my time to align my pieces so that they're perfectly flush. Now that I've got my pieces aligned, I can go ahead and tack in that first nail. Now I can double check my alignment, make any necessary adjustments, and now I'm ready to finish off my nails. The last step will just be to wipe up any excess glue. Alright, I have both of my short walls attached, and now I'm ready to move on to the next step, which will be to attach my second long wall. Let's go ahead and get started attaching our second long wall. The first thing I'm going to do is locate the long wall and place it here onto my workstation. I'm then going to go ahead and place one finish nail into each of the pre-drilled holes. Now that I've got my nails set, I can move this piece off to the side for a second while I set glue onto the up-facing edges of my short walls. Now that I've got the glue set, I can go ahead and spread it out evenly using a finger. Don't forget to wipe your finger clean and also wipe up any excess glue that might be spilling over. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and set the nailed edge of this long wall over the glued edges of our short walls. Now you may notice after you set your piece that it's very challenging to line up both sides at once. So we're actually not going to do that. We're going to start on one side and focus on that side first. I recommend focusing on your dominant hand side first. So I'm just going to start lining up this side here. I'm not even going to worry or look at the other side for now until this side is fully set and attached. Once again, it's very important that your side is fully flush before you hammer anything in. Alright, I've got it lined up evenly, so let's start by tacking in our first nail. Once I've got that nail tacked in, I can go ahead and double check my alignment before I continue hammering. Alright, now that I've lined it all up, let's go ahead and finish off the nails on this side. I've got both nails fully in, so let's go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. Alright, now that we've got one side attached, we can rotate this around to the remaining side and begin to line that one up. Now you may notice that with the three sides attached, it's kind of trying to pull out of flush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my time to line everything up, then I'm going to use my non-dominant hand to hold everything steady while I tack in my first nail. Alright, I've got my pieces to a place that I'm happy with, so I'm going to hold it in place and tack in that first nail. Once I've got that first nail tacked in, I can go ahead and just double check that alignment and then finish off the nails. Last step is just to wipe up any glue. Alright, we have the frame of our treasure box finished, so now we're ready to move on to the next step, which will be to attach the bottom. Let's go ahead and attach the bottom of our treasure box. Now what you want to do now is just take a look at your frame and decide which side you want to be the top and which side you want to be the bottom. It's purely up to you and it's just an aesthetic choice, so don't worry about choosing the wrong side. I'm going to go ahead and set this as my bottom and make sure that the side that I want to be the bottom is facing up. I'm then going to go ahead and locate my bottom piece, and I'm going to set it onto my workstation and begin to set my nails. Now that I've got all my nails set, I can move this piece off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and lay a bead of glue all the way around this up-facing edge of the frame. Now that I've got the glue set, I can go ahead and wipe up any excess using my rag. Okay, now I can go ahead and set the nailed edge of my bottom over the glued edge of my frame. Now, similarly to when I was attaching my long wall, it's going to be really challenging to line up all of these edges at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a short side edge. It doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to focus on flushing that edge up first. So I'm going to rotate this so that a short edge or a short wall faces me, and I'm going to line up that edge as perfectly as I can. Now that I've got this edge nice and flush, you'll notice that there's one nail on this edge, and I'm going to go ahead and hammer that nail in first. Now that I've got that nail on the short side edge in, I'm going to go ahead and rotate my piece so that a long side edge or a long wall is facing me, and I'm going to line up that edge next. I should be able to pivot the bottom back and forth on that first nail to make sure it's aligned. Once I've got this edge lined up, I can go ahead and tack in one nail on this edge. After I tack in that nail, I can double check my alignment and hammer in both of these nails all the way. Now that I have two edges attached, I should be pretty well lined up, and I can go ahead and finish off the rest of the nails. Once I have all of my nails hammered in, the last thing I want to do is double check that my nails are flush. Because these nails are going to be on a downward facing edge, it's really important that they're fully flush with the piece. So I'm going to go ahead and run my finger over all of the nails and see if any of them are sticking up. And it does feel like these two are sticking up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm holding my hammer completely flat and give them a couple of extra taps to flatten them out. And just like that, my nails feel good, so I'm ready to go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. Don't forget to check inside the box for any glue that might be in there. All right, we finished the main structure of our box, so the next step will be to start assembling our lid. Let's go ahead and start assembling our lid. So the first thing I'm going to need is the top piece. And again, I want to remind you that the top piece has this dado on one side and the other side is just flat with that hole in the center. What I want to do is set this piece down so that the dado faces up. I'm then going to locate the machine screw from my hardware tray, and I'm going to place that right there into the hole. I'm then going to lift this piece up and push the screw all the way down. So it should be sticking out the other side like that. Next, what I'm going to need is my knob. So the knob has this top part that's going to be used as kind of a handle, and then the bottom has this hole that's going to line up with the screw right there. So what I want to do is place a little bit of glue around the rim of the knob. And then I'm going to line it up over that screw and turn it clockwise to screw it on. Once I've got it screwed on as tightly as I can with my fingers, I'm going to lift it up, hold the knob with one hand, and use my other hand and my Phillips head screwdriver to tighten that screw a little bit more. Once I've got that screw nice and tight, my knob is secured, and then all I need to do is just wipe up any glue that might be spilling out. Okay, we have our knob attached, so now let's go ahead and attach our insert. So I'm going to move this off to the side for just a second, and I'm going to grab my insert. Now remember, the insert has the logo on one side, and that side has a rounded edge. It's very important that when we're working with this, that rounded edge, the side with the logo, is facing up. So go ahead and place it onto your work surface so that that faces up. Next, we're going to need our last bag of hardware, which is our green dot bag, and this is going to contain our 3/4 inch finish nails. These nails are a little bit smaller than the ones that we were using earlier. So let's go ahead and open up that bag and dump them into our tray. All right, now we're going to go ahead and set one nail into each of these pre-drilled holes on the insert. Once we've got our nail set, we can move our piece off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and flip over the top so that the dado faces up. We're going to be spreading glue around this dado because that's where we're going to set our insert. Once we've got our glue on there, we can go ahead and grab our insert, nails facing up, and place it into that dado. We want to make sure that it aligns perfectly. Once we've got it aligned, we're going to go ahead and slide this over to the edge of our workstation so that the knob hangs over the edge. That way it'll lie flat while we hammer it in. So I'm going to go ahead and hold this in place with my non-dominant hand, make sure that I'm bracing it against the work surface, and I'm going to hammer in that first nail. Once I have that first nail hammered in, I'm going to flip this around. Once again, the knob is hanging over the edge of the work surface so that our piece lays flat. I'm bracing it against the work surface with my non-dominant hand, and I'm hammering in the nail. All right, we have our insert now attached. Our lid is fully assembled. So the last thing to do is just going to be to wipe up any excess glue. I've got my glue all wiped up, so now we can go ahead and test out our lid and we should have a perfect fit. And just like that, our treasure box is complete. So all that's left to do is decorate this. I'm going to go ahead and get it all painted and I'll be right back. All right, I got my treasure box all decorated and I think it turned out really nice. So now I can take it home and fill it up with whatever treasure I might want. I really appreciate you guys stopping by to build this with me on Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.